Welcome to Above and Below, the podcast of the Construction Industry Alliance for Suicide Prevention. My name is Sonya Bohmann, and I am the executive director. Unfortunately, my co-host Zalk is not able to join us today, but I have a very special guest who will make up for that in spades. Eli, why don't you introduce yourself?
Good morning. My name is Eli Embleton. By way of trade, my job title is the Dream Manager.
What does that mean?
That means that I get to meet with all the employees at Zachry one-on-one and essentially just ask them about their dreams. It's a long story the way that I got there, but functionally I lead leadership development for the Zachry Corporation. But roots were I began as a safety trainer because of my ability to speak Spanish. And that's how I got into this industry.
Really?
Yeah.
So Spanish was the lead-in, or did you have safety training? Did you go to school for safety? Give us some of this background, because I think people out there are wondering, what options are for me in the construction industry?
Yeah. So honestly, I started young. I was probably 16 when I had my first construction job.
Hmm.
But later on, I had moved to South America and I learned Spanish there. And then a lifetime later, I was looking for work and I had no credentials in safety, but I could speak Spanish. And that was the thing that got me hired. And then from there on the job training, and then I went to school for safety protocols and I went to Texas A&M to get the COSHO, the Certified Safety and Health Official.
Okay,
That was my
very cool.
path into safety.
Very cool. So I need to go backwards a second. You are not a native Spanish speaker.
I'm not. I learned when I was
Okay,
19 years old.
very cool. And living in South America, tell us a little bit about how'd you get from wherever you grew up to there and what that looked like for you and how you get to use that now.
Yeah. So I think I took 3 years of Spanish in high school and just
Hey.
failed dismally at it and had no interest in it. And then
Hmm.
I went to go do some service for church and
Hmm.
went down to South America. And I was there for several years. I also was fortunate just by circumstance to be living in different communities. So I picked up some other languages and that kicked off the desire to learn more. So I went back to school when I came home and I have some degree or two. One of them is in ancient languages, which makes no sense to anybody.
Very
But
cool. I speak a little Greek, so I get it. Yep.
there we go. Yeah, that's my degree is in classics, so Greek and Latin.
Yes.
But that's kind of where starts from is just living somewhere else and showing up without the skill of Spanish it was life informing, meaning there was a huge barrier between me and the rest of the world. And for the first 3 months, it was just devastatingly lonely. I could
Okay.
ask about where's the bathroom and I could get some food,
Mhm.
but without communication, that was a struggle. So that's been one of those things that's informed me about how I approach work now is just remembering how incredibly difficult it was to just engage with people without having language.
That's so interesting. I mean, we've obviously had other guests on our podcast that have talked about language. We've had Loretta Mulberry and Monique Lewis, but we've never touched on the loneliness factor in this. And that's so poignant, obviously, but dig in a little bit more on that for me. And let's talk about, because I would have not made connected those dots to thinking about what it might feel like on our job site if you're there by yourself and don't even have the language to talk to others.
Yeah. So there's some really fundamental things about just being able to get stuff done, but
Mhm.
there's some really human things. So when I remember most when I was learning Spanish is the inability to express myself.
Mm.
So I wanting to reach out to another human being, like our conversations were just shallow by nature. And so people couldn't get to know me. I could understand more than I spoke. So I could kind of get people, but I was sort of just a burden floating around until I became fluent. And there's some gaps in between, like you learn and you can functionally get by. But
Mhm.
I remember because I wrote in my journal every day. And I remember just being like, why am I here? I want to go home. Like I could understand, but when you can't express yourself, you're kind of stuck.
Mhm.
And what that's done for me now is that as the dream manager, it's a privileged position. I'm not a therapist, so people don't believe I'm psychoanalyzing them or judging them.
Mhm.
I'm not a priest, so I'm not judging anything going on, but people, it
Sure.
gives them freedom to open up. And what I hear is, I've been a foreman for 20 years. Love to be a superintendent. but
Mm.
I can't communicate in a Department of Transportation meeting. If there's an ownership meeting, I can't express what's going on. I'm a little bit slower to understand. And that was the impetus to get sort of moving in the things that I've done lately with the language barrier at Zachary.
So I want to talk about that, obviously, because that, you and I had a conversation a couple months ago, and I was just so moved hearing about where Zachary is with that. I also want to talk about, because I had the privilege of coming down and spending some time with you guys when you first kicked off some of your mental health programming, is what are they doing currently and why, and how that's affecting that these programs really go hand in hand from a mental health standpoint as well. And I know I just threw a bunch of things at you, so take them in whatever order you want.
Yeah. So I don't see them as separate things.
Awesome.
I think mental health, I'm not a professional, I'm around them a lot, but from my understanding, mental health is sort of viewed, there's a stigma with it. And it's usually mental health is when something goes wrong.
Yes.
I view mental health as a performance thing, meaning
Mhm.
that if you want to perform at a higher level, your mental health is just like your physical health. We need to
Mhm.
exercise and make that work. But it does, if your mental health is affected by what's happening at work, that's a huge indicator. I can tell you that performance will go down.
Of course, yes.
And the biggest way that's manifested at Zachary is the explosion of talent.
Mm.
By that, I mean, we demographically, 70% of our employees are Hispanic. If you look at our first layer of leadership just 18 months ago, the foremen were divided into 70% of our foremen are Hispanic and 30% English speaking and 70% are Spanish speaking.
Mhm.
When you move up to the superintendent level, that number flips.
Sure. Yep.
There's a million reasons why people thought that's the way it was. In my head, it was language, but I didn't want to just assume that. So we actually went out. We did 180 one-on-one stay interviews.
Ow. Tell me what's a stay interview. What
So
does that
stay
mean?
interviews, usually we have like an exit interview when people leave.
Yes.
To get in front of that, why not ask them, hey, why do you stay here?
Hmm.
And it's just three simple questions. And one of them is, what would be like, what's the barrier between you and your next step in life? And how can we help you achieve that? And then almost universally for our Hispanic foreman, it was, language is the barrier. And we took that information back to our leadership and said, hey, I think we should invest here. We have an idea that would make this work. And thankfully they did. They've supported it. They've funded our program called Functional Spanish. And then
Mhm.
in a matter of 18 months, the number's been equalized.
Mhm.
So at the superintendent level, it's now a direct 50-50, which is a huge
Incredible.
change. Yeah.
Incredible.
And what people I think miss in the number is that huge shift, those people have been with us. They
Mm.
didn't get any more work skills. They already had those. They've been here forever. But
Sure.
when we
Yeah.
closed the gap, all of a sudden the promotion started to happen. We didn't have to go hire from the outside. So it was like an internal, like just like fountain of talent that was there. And
Of
I think,
trained and already understanding your culture talent as
yeah,
well, which is, as we know in this industry, the thing that everyone is looking for and clamoring to get a hold of.
yeah. And I resonate with that because when I was learning Spanish, again, I was full of vim and vigor. I had talents, but when I couldn't express them, I was just floating around. And people thought that I was probably less intelligent, or
I was just gonna say that.
they thought I didn't have any talents. But as soon as I had the language, then people started putting me to work. That's what we've seen. Is the key difference is that leadership, if they start to learn a little bit of Spanish, we're not
Mhm.
making anybody fluent. We're just giving them a functional level. And then they show some vulnerability. Like they're out there practicing a little bit of Spanish. And honestly, it is terrible. Accents are bad. They're messing up every verb. But what it does is it gives our trade people like, oh my gosh, my boss is trying. He's trying to meet me
Mhm.
halfway. And it just gives them the permission to be, okay, I can do this. Because if I have a sound bite for anything, it's that people's biggest hurdle to learning a language is not skill. There's a fear of embarrassment. And if you can get over that fear of embarrassment, people start to try. And in trying and applying the language, then you start to actually make it work.
That's So profound. I think we just don't, there's all of these things that we think about as the whys we can't, but you do it differently at Zachary. You do it top down and bottom up so that there's like the meeting in the middle. Tell us a little bit more about that as well and really how this works. Like what's the framework for making this happen?
Yeah. And it started in it's not a negative place per se, but what I noticed when I first started is that there's an attitude. And the attitude
Mhm.
is if you are living in the United States, you should learn English, which is a valid point. But until you understand how incredibly difficult it is to learn a language,
Especially English, that is
yeah, English
not
is a hard
important.
language.
It is. Yep.
And when you have a little empathy, meaning that once you've gone through our functional Spanish program, there's a light that clicks that goes, oh, yeah, this is really hard. And then you can start to find that middle ground. So, what we've done is we've taken right now over 100 of our leaders and done these 3-day retreats. They're fully immersive. They're at one of the hotels that we built and own, and we take people in to do like the simple things. So they check into the hotel in Spanish. We go out to a restaurant and they have to order tacos in Spanish. We bring in culture elements. We bring in mariachi bands and we bring in folklorico dancers and we cook together. So all these activities are culturally based. So you don't just have words, you have, oh, this is how my coworkers see the world. This is what they
There's some
enjoy.
emotion.
Yeah, and that just makes connections. And when you feel connected, people are more engaged. When they're more engaged, they perform better. And then to wrap all of this in a nutshell, if you're connected and you're engaged, your mental health improves. Period.
That's amazing. But that's not all you guys do for mental health either. So what does that piece of your job look like also? And how have you seen impact on both sides of this conversation?
Yeah. So
And why is it important to you specifically if you want to share that?
yeah. So high level first, we have a very talented employee assistance program manager. Her name is Mariana Barahona, and she is just a force of nature.
She is. I've had the privilege of working with her.
And she put together our mental health champion program. And this is a program where she's out certifying internal champions that have a baseline level of skills. And then we bring in programs like Vital Cog and we bring in a number of others. And so it's a constant thing at Zachary where we are always working on mental health and well-being. One of our proudest accomplishments is we didn't apply for this, but our owner was on an airplane. He picked up Newsweek magazine, and on the front, it was the best companies to work for mental health and well-being. And in his head, he said, you know what? It would be great if one day we got into this magazine, we would make it because it would show that we were doing it. And then he flipped through it and he noticed Zachary Construction was right there.
That's amazing.
And it's just one of those pieces where it's become such a part of our culture of caring
Mhm.
that it really does bring in a huge connection and it removes fear of safety and to bring up things that would be hard. On a more granular level, I got into this industry because my life took a drastic turn when there was a very violent event at my home and I had to protect my family. And so I had to be violent in return. And the man that did this ended up in jail, but it really put a big dark cloud on our family. What that did for me was it sent me into a depression and a spiral where I couldn't get out. And just like we talked about in our mental health programs and our suicide prevention, I felt like, number one, I was a burden to my family because I couldn't work anymore. I was so angry at the world and I couldn't see a future.
Mhm.
And then, I mean, I had capacity and I had a plan in place for me. I had a very specific day and time where I couldn't see a better future. And so I was going to solve a problem and the problem, and I won't go too deep into this, the man that attacked my wife was released from prison early.
Oh my
There-
gracious.
There's a COVID mix up. And so I figured I would just take him out of the world. And that would be one problem that I could solve being a man and a provider.
Mhm.
After that, I would take my own life. Thankfully, I woke up like shot out of the dark at 3 a.m. at the day this was going to happen. And a thought popped into my head, and it was, who could you be if you forgave him? And it sounds nice right now. In the moment, I hated that thought.
Wow, bet.
And I was so angry that why would I even think this? But almost immediately, I went into thinking about, who could I be? And in the moment, I was depressed and angry, and life wasn't great. So why not think of a better future? And immediately, I started being able to dream again and to see things beyond like the present moment of survival. That has informed the work that I do now, which is I know that other people struggle just like I did. I'm not a special case. And I know people are under lots of heavy burdens and they feel like they're a burden. And if you're a male, especially in our industry, we don't have a lot of people that feel like we can talk about this problem openly. And so we've been trying to create a culture in which that's possible. And that's opened up Zachry in ways I hope I've played a part in that. But it's the driving force of who I am and what I do today. I think people have magic and majesty in them. And if we just let it go dark, we're missing out on a lot.
Thank you for sharing that with us. I think that that vulnerability that you have and that is the culture at Zachary really makes a difference. And you all obviously being, nominated and receiving that. But I'll tell you a quick Zachary story is that the day that I was there to do some training with you all, it was you had kicked off these mental health champions. And I actually walked in the room in the middle of David Zachary talking about why this is important to him, but saying specifically, make time for my own mental health on my schedule every week. And it is a non negotiable standing appointment that I do. And then he left and, he finished his presentation and he left. And then we broke into groups. And I was with one of your superintendents from, I want to say like North Carolina area. And he was sitting next to me and we were talking about just impact or something like I don't remember what the exact question was, but what he turned to me and said, I now have a different perspective because if the owner of this company at the size that we are can make time for mental health, maybe I can too. And I was like, I
Beautiful.
tell this story so many times and in so many places when we're talking about how do you create that culture of care. And it's really that vulnerability, the vulnerability that you share, the vulnerability that your leadership shares, because that's how we start to crack the code, right? It's how we start to, there's such power in shared stories, especially if we tell them safely, that people start to find those connections and feel those assimilations and they feel like they're not alone in whether it's their language or in their struggles with mental health. It's a hard world and our industry isn't easy either. And when we couple all of those things together, we really have that perfect storm.
Well said. And I didn't know that about that conference. That's
Yeah, it's one of my
a great
favorite
story.
stories to tell, and it's so very impactful, but I also remember thinking, like, I cannot believe that the leader of this company is sharing that so very openly, and you could see the people in the room just relaxing a little bit, feeling like they were not that this was not a performance because sometimes when you enter into these conversations, the team feels like we're here to check another box. This is another safety training. We're all going to go along with this, but the vibe changed immediately. And people were really receptive and then became more open themselves to feeling like they belong to something bigger than just what they were dealing with.
I think I've heard a couple people say that our culture is made on if our leaders are vulnerable, then our craft and our trades feel respected. And when I go ask everybody when I'm doing interviews, the number one thing they want, and it's never money, it's always respect.
Sure.
And it's such a great thing when I feel privileged. Our leader does this. He's vulnerable enough to stand in front and say, "I've got some struggles,
Mhm.
and I'm doing something about it." And it gives it's that blanket permission. Hey, if he can do it, I can do it.
Absolutely. I think that this conversation obviously is bigger than just the companies that we speak to or the companies that we come from. And you have a really unique opportunity to take this on a more national level. You're the co-chair of the Construction Mental Health and Wellbeing Conference. Tell us what that feels like or what that responsibility is about.
Yeah. So it's again, I keep using the word privilege. Like I've sort of Forrest Gumped my way into life. I bumped into Sally Spencer
Meta knowledge.
Thomas, yeah, and Cal Beyer, who was the other co-chair,
Mhm.
and just seeing how they've put years into this, and they bring folks like you and like great thinkers into a place where we can have conversations. And I'm noticing a shift from where we used to be talking about awareness. I think
Mhm.
people are aware now. And so now this conference is more, hey, let's make it practical. Let's make it like leadership focused and
Actionable.
actionable. And that's honestly, that's a challenge. How to strike a balance between motivating people because it's hard work, but also like, here's some practical tools and culture building so that people feel safe to speak up.
Absolutely. So what is your, and I'm sorry because I didn't prep you for this one. What is your, if you could say, what is your legacy to this industry?
If I was going to, and I've done this work too, I think I'm alive because I'm supposed to help people feel permission to be present. And what I mean by that is I spent so long in survival mode where I couldn't think beyond today. And my conversations were always guarded, and I just wasn't getting much out of life. So in this industry, I think I'm able to break down some walls because I can be 100% focused on the now because I'm not worried about the future anymore. And so if people take anything, hopefully from an experience with me, is that I will listen to them like they've never been listened to before, that I'll be 100% available for them because I've gone through a healing journey. And that sounds kind of foo-foo, but I've gone through some difficult work and I feel safe. And I can hopefully bring that to other people and they can see either my story or just interactions that it's going to be okay and that it is okay to get help.
That's incredible. I think our industry needs much more of that. And I thank you for breaking down walls to be able to have these conversations. I think a lot more of us need to hear them, and hopefully, we will reach some of those people today. I have one last question for you, and it's one that we ask all of our podcast guests. But if you could choose one word, and that is your word of the year, the thing that guides you through whatever the next 12 months or 365 days will look like, what is that word?
So this is people know me for this one. There's a Scottish explorer named William Hutchison Murray, and the quote has just been seared into my mind. It's one is committed. There is hesitancy, the chance to draw back. And the word commitment for me drives my life. When I'm committed, nothing could stop me. When I'm not committed, I notice things get in the way and there's so much to do, but I am committed beyond my own fears, beyond my own vulnerability, that I'm just going to keep moving. And that's my inspiration, my word for the year.
Well, I love that because, in this space, that word tends to have a very negative connotation, and hopefully that will leave some of our listeners with a different focus or a different spin on that word. So thank you for sharing that. I will share that my word is catalyst.
Awesome.
And that I think we have the ability to catalyze change in this industry and to make a real difference. But I will also share with you that Zolk's word is gratitude and express that to you that although he's not on the call with us today or on the recording with us today, that he and I are both grateful that we get to have these conversations and that we have people like you in this industry making real change. So thanks for being with us today.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. I'm very grateful for you having me here and I get to talk to you again. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks everyone for listening. Have a great day.